On today's episode of An Echo of Glory, we dissect the big win at Burnley and we take a big stats dive into Angeball with OPTA analyst Ali Tweedale. Welcome to another episode of An Echo of Glory. Joining me today, as always, Gary Diamond.
Good morning.
Sometimes with us, Jake Robson.
Hello.
And we've changed the formation today. Playing right back to the side of me, Ali Tweedale from OPTA analyst. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
You've been on before, but welcome to the studio.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here.
Good, great to have you on. We are going to do some deep dives on the stats, the Angeball stats, the Tottenham stats from the first four league games of the season. We're going to totally ignore the Fulham draw, statistically the draw against Fulham. What we're going to do, as always, well, first of all, actually, happy birthday to someone. Hey, Tottenham Hotspur.
Hey.
141 years today.
141 years today. Didn't bring in a cake, didn't bring in a Lotus Biscoff donut.
I'm never bringing one of those.
No, we're never going to find that donut.
But Ali said he'd sing happy birthday, so.
It's, you know, like you have when you have people in for the first time, the, what do you call it?
Yeah, they got
The
to the song, there
initiation.
you
So you've got to stand on the desk. What's
Off
your
you go.
song?
I realised I've got to go.
So happy birthday to Tottenham Hotspur. Some players on there, the great and good. Harry Kane's on there. Remember him?
He was good.
He was good. So happy birthday to Tottenham Hotspur. And we celebrated with a 3-0 win at Burnley. But, go on.
Was it 16 years ago, that 4-4 draw with
Villa.
Villa, when they were singing happy birthday to us because we were 4-1
4-1 down.
And then Kabul scored top
Paul
bins.
Chimbonda scored?
Was it Chimbonda as well, was it?
Yeah, in that
Wow.
horrible
That
kit.
heinous kit.
That was a terrible kit.
Yeah, one-off special.
People actually bought that as well.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
People are idiots.
Hey, here he is. We've got a habit of upsetting people on the show. You're fitting well.
Right, club news. Another win for the under-21s. Beat Blackburn 4-0, 2 goals from Sinsot Bell, and 1 each from Jamie Donnelly and Will Lancashire. They are top of the league with 4 wins from 4. I didn't watch the highlights of that. I caught a bit of the highlights of the Man City 5-0 drubbing. They were absolutely brilliant. So something must have happened since the changeover from the last regime to the youth team as
I
well.
guess training not as traffic cones, is it?
Not training as traffic cones.
It's a progression, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely helped them. Fulham have also won 4 out of 4. Tottenham have conceded just once. The next game is away to Stoke on the 25th of September.
Can they do it away to Stoke on a cold, whatever 25th of September night it is?
If it's anything like this,
On
it
a
won't
hot
be cold.
25th of
Yeah.
September.
Come on, go with me.
Let him do the joke.
Oh, I get it.
Let him do the joke.
Thanks, Gary.
The under-18s won 3-0 at Blackburn in the Premier League Cup on Saturday. So no league game for them. But I think they lost their first game, but they've picked up as well nicely. We'll come to the first team soon. The transfer window is now shut for players coming in. No new centre-back. Ali, I'll start with you because we've talked ad nauseum on here about players in, players out. We did sign a new centre-back in Van der Veen. We didn't sign another one. And then last night we heard that Sanchez has gone to Galatasaray on a permanent deal, leaving really Dyer and Ash Phillips as the backups for...
Ben Davies?
Yeah, I was going to say for Ben, you got Ben Davies and Emerson can play there as well. But where are you on the fact that we possibly should have and didn't sign another first-choice centre-back?
Yeah, I think it could turn out to be a big mistake. Like, it's not completely... It's not at all ridiculous to expect that those two, that Romero and Van der Ven, won't play 38 games. So the other players will be needed. So I would have liked someone else. I kind of like the fact that Ange has apparently been so impressed with Phillips. So he's kind of trusting him on that. But yeah, you don't want to end up with Ashley Phillips, an unproven Ashley Phillips, and Eric Dyer at centre back in January, do you? Before then in November when we can't sign anyone. So yeah, it's not great. But I wonder if it was a decision made after the Fulham result. 2 competitions, you're not going to be able to keep a third centre-back who wants to be playing, a third £30 million, £40 million centre-back happy with that few games to play. So I can kind of understand it.
Yeah, look, it's a lot easier to keep Ash Phillips happy on the bench, but if we do get a big injury, as you say, it's going to be an issue. Your mate Alfie Dorrington, there's a lovely little highlights reel from the Blackburn win this week, but it is it does really leave us short. I can't see Ash Phillips being really the next cab off the rank if we do get an injury. I think he would shuffle it about, and it would be Davies or Emerson.
I was saying last week on the pod that, I mean, we recorded 24 hours before the end of the transfer window, and I said, look, you know, whoever's coming in or whatever, the key thing is getting a centre-back. And if we go into the season with Sanchez as our third centre-back, I'm going to be fuming.
Well, you got your wish.
I was. Where's that around?
And by the way, let me just clarify, this wasn't about Davinson Sanchez, who I've got a lot of time and respect for as just a player for Tottenham Hotspur. He's given his everything, and it's a terrible shame that his last kick of the ball for Spurs was a missed penalty. But in a situation where he stepped up and was put into a position that he should never have been in, but he stepped up and did his best and tried to do his job, which is effectively the whole summary of his time at Tottenham.
We can't put that as a summary of his Tottenham.
No, it was. He was far too long doing things that he wasn't skilled to do. Playing right back at the Emirates, it was disgraceful to ask him to do that. You know, and this is a guy that simply we've known for long enough wasn't good enough, but always came into the team and did what he could. And so my comments last week weren't about him, and I want to clarify that because I've got a lot of time for him, much more so than somebody like Ndombele. So I wish Davinson Sanchez all the best of luck. But they were about, as us as a football team and as a club, we needed two top centre-backs coming into this season. And it is a dereliction of duty, in my view, from the top down, from Levy down to the recruitment team, down to everybody involved, that we did not get in that third centre-back. Because we've now got to play 16 league games up until January the 1st, praying to God that Romero and Van de Ven are fit for those 16 league games. Because if they're not, the drop-off is colossal. But I do think as well, when you look at the Galatasaray stuff with Sanchez and Ndombele going there, we were very interested allegedly in Victor Nelson from Galatasaray earlier in the season, who I think is also a left-sided centre-back. And I just wonder if with Galatasaray offering to pay peanuts of Ndombele's wages and actually 9 million over 5 years for Sanchez, those are two pretty good deals for Galatasaray. It just makes me think, I wonder if on the 1st of January, Victor Nelson is joining us. So that is a risk for 16 league games. But also, I understand why they've done it.
The one thing we don't know, and you're gonna have a go at me, I can tell from saying this, is that they got Johnson in, and it may be, you know, this may be really black and white and binary. They got Johnson in. Maybe Ange was given the option. Listen, we can get one more player in. Do you want Brennan Johnson or do you want a centre-back? And maybe he said, actually... But we don't know. All I'm saying is he may be happy with where things are at.
But you must know, that Galatasaray deal hasn't come overnight, right? Those talks must have been going. These deals don't happen in 24, 48 hours, right? That's been ongoing for some time. They must have had a good idea that Sanchez was going. And if Andrew said, OK, fine, I trust Phillips or I can bring in Emerson Royale, or fine, then he said that. But it just is, to me, an unfathomable risk to take that Romero or Van de Ven could get injured and the drop-off, whoever it is, whichever way, up until January. And then again, you know, even if Sanchez had come in, the drop-off would be huge. But it's kind of a little bit more, you know, manageable, isn't it?
I think as fans, that's how we see it, but he may see it. He may see, actually, the way Ash Phillips has played, I see him fitting in instead of, if Romero gets injured, the way Ash Phillips has been training, this guy can cut it. We don't know. That's what I'm saying.
And I was all for, you know, saying that Dorrington should be our 5th centre-back this season, or a young centre-back should be coming through.
I think he still will be, because I think the names we've mentioned, Davies, Emerson, will be above him on the list.
Yeah, and all fine. And if Phillips gets a few minutes here and there or whatever it is, and Dorrington comes onto the bench, I think that's great, and I'm all for the promotion of youth. But this is putting a lot of strain on the squad. And the other thing that we mentioned just before we started talking was the other option that we had was if Udogie got injured, you had the option of moving Van de Ven out to left back. That's gone. Can't do that now. So do you know what I mean? It's weakened. It really has taken away a lot of options throughout the squad.
Right, well, we've got rid of Sanchez and Ndombele. Reguilon's gone, Tanganga's gone, Rodon's gone, Spencer's gone. So this clear out is happening, the fresh start that Ange wants. I think we're kind of kicking a can down the road for 12 months with those players coming back. But I think most of those have played their last game for Tottenham. I mean, Ndombele hasn't played for us since he walked off against Morecambe in January 2022.
I don't think it's worth our breath to even talk about.
No, but Ali, last year Arsenal, I believe, made the fewest changes to their starting 11. I think Chelsea had a habit of doing that. I think under Conte,
They did.
it will help us. We've said on this pod before that not having Europe will probably be a blessing for this season, but we really do. It's like the old days, when teams used to win titles in the 80s by playing 13 players. We're kind of going to have that, aren't we?
Yeah, you have to get really lucky. But I mean, personally, I think we need to be realistic, and I'm not getting too ahead of myself after 4 games. I think it's been really, really, really good. But realistically, with this squad, we're not going to be challenging. I don't think we're not going to be challenging for major honours, and we're going to have to be lucky to even push for the top 4 with this squad. With this, I just mean in terms of injuries, right. We're going to have to be lucky with injuries for sure, as we've just been discussing. Because of the drop-off, bang on, yeah. And I also think a real concern with Romero will be suspensions as well, because
you say he and Van de Ven haven't apparently. You probably know better than I, but apparently they've not made a foul between them this season.
Well, some of the clips of Romero, I think, I
don't know quite how he got away with.
I'm not sure if he might not have been given, but yeah. But
that's fair.
There's been a huge increase. I won't go into the details, but there's been a huge increase in yellow cards this season because of the new directives on time wasting and.
Well, we were talking. I was a victim of this on Sunday morning.
right, exactly.
I got one
top,
of those.
Right down to the bottom.
You deserve everything.
The poor ref.
The poor ref, yeah. He was a poor ref.
Hopefully he's listening.
He might be, because I know that he's a big Spurs fan. He actually wrote a book on Spurs years ago. I think the George Graham book.
He was listening.
Don't suck up to
Mark
him
Jacob,
now.
if you're listening.
He's just turned off.
Don't put it through, please. I can't pay the fine.
I just think there's also a worry with Romero in particular that there could be a suspension. But yeah, we are going to have to be lucky with injuries. I think less so in midfield. I think Maddison is absolutely going to have to be playing every single game. But I think maybe I'm not such a hater of Hojbjerg. I know he gets a lot of stick, and I think in the number 8's positions we're quite well stocked. And in the front 3, I'm actually quite happy with what we've got now. We've got Brennan Johnson. I think competing only on one front for the next 3 and a bit months is okay in those positions, but I do agree in defence we are going to have to be really lucky.
It's a good point about Hojbjerg. Really divides opinion on social media. Not sure about the opinion in this room. You've said you're a fan, or you're not so fussed that he's left. I think it's key the way we've played. That someone like him is still in the squad and comes on for those 15 minutes when you're closing out games. There was a point against Burnley, and we will come on to the game, where the first 20 minutes Sarr was all over the place, and I was like, he actually might need to bring on Hojbjerg here, because I felt as good as Sarr is, Burnley were playing between the lines, and we looked a little bit all over the place. But I'll ask you, Jake, first. He was someone who was linked to leaving the club, and people on social media seem to be delighted about that. Where are you on Hojbjerg still staying?
If he listens to anything that the fans say, I feel really sorry for him, because when he arrived, he was seen after a few games. Oh my goodness, this is the player we've needed all this time. Somebody a bit solid, get the dressing room together, brilliant leader. Yeah. You can see him kind of commanding things out on the pitch. And I think the problem that he's suffered with is he's sort of almost. He's kind of one of the beacons of how bad we were almost, or how boring and how unadventurous the football was last season, because his role essentially was as a 2 in midfield to sit there and do nothing. Yeah. So a lot of the fingers are pointed at, well, we've got no creativity, Hojbjerg's not good enough on the ball, his passing's not good enough. But actually, in the Ange role of sitting as a 6, or as you said, to come on in the last 20 minutes, he's a very calm head. He's actually not that bad on the ball. He's obviously good at his positional sense is pretty good. I think there's more time to run in the Hojbjerg
especially
story.
When the apparent trade would have been him to Spain and then signing Conor Gallagher, who I like, but for me that wouldn't work. The squad dynamic would have changed. Not only is Hojbjerg a leader, but on the pitch, Gallagher's
he's an 8.
He's an 8. For me, I'm very delighted Hojbjerg stayed.
What defines an 8 these days? And Ali, you might be able to help us here, because I see sort of Maddison as a true 8, that true creative midfielder, and I actually think the way that Postecoglou plays is with a 6, your sort of anchor man as it was back in the day, your 8, which is Maddison, and then a box-to-box midfielder, okay, which is what Sarr is at the minute, what I can see Bentancur coming in to do, and which is what I saw Gallagher coming in to do. I don't think Gallagher's an 8. I think he's, I don't know, would that be a 7? Would you just that box-to-box midfielder that's up and down, the engine room of the team, as it were. And that's why Sarr's been doing so well, because he can really get involved defensively, but he can also get up and bang a goal in, play a lovely through ball for Maddison. And that's where I saw Gallagher coming in. And actually, if we had signed Gallagher, you mentioned that Sarr was all over the place, and he was in the first 20-25 minutes against Burnley. That's where I would see Gallagher stepping in. And then in terms of Hojbjerg, the need for him decreases, because with Bentancur coming back, he could play the 6 or that box-to-box role. And actually, I see Sarr going forwards as more of a 6 anyway. So Hojbjerg going forwards, I can see why they would have been happy for him to go. But he has stayed, and he's an experienced player and will add value to the squad. So, it's good that he stayed. It would have also been fine if he'd have gone, in my view.
Right, look, I don't like this rate the window out of 10, because it's the pie in the sky number. But as a window, leaving the squad that we have now, are you happy? Do you think more could have been done?
Yeah, of course. I mean, has any football fan ever finished a window and been and just thought, yeah, we've got it perfect? Yeah, no.
Arsenal win the window most leagues, most seasons.
Yeah. Well, didn't Everton win it a few years ago and then nearly got relegated?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think what has been good about this window is that we've improved the first team.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, at the start of the summer, I said James Maddison was the person we had to go out and get. And a year earlier, we bought Bissouma, Udogie, Richarlison, some obviously good players, but no one who improved the first team. We improved the squad, and the first team went a bit off the boil, and then problems started to emerge. I think by improving the first team, that is a really, really, really big thing, and for that reason, I'm happy. But there's definitely still some holes that.
Yeah, but that has to come first, doesn't it? You can improve your squad, which kind of means sometimes you're just improving your bench. But actually, we've improved the first team, and that was so important.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think, Potch's failing when he was here was that he consistently said you can't improve this first team. And perhaps he was right at that time. That was a first team that went 78 odd games and was 6 clear of anybody else. But we didn't win a trophy because ultimately he didn't improve the squad behind it, and he said no to players coming in that were better than other squad players, and the drop-off wouldn't have been as big as it was when first-team players are out. I think what we've done so well now is the desperate need to improve the first team. The next phase of this is, as we were discussing right at the top of this, get that third centre-back, get some cover for Udogie where that drop-off... But the only place where we can really see that is Emerson Royal at right back and Porro. Okay, Porro's number 1, clearly now. And for all the reasons we saw against Burnley when he was crucial to a lot of our attacking. We'll come on to that. Midfield, we're okay. Up front, we're kind of okay. I'd still say we need an out-and-out 9. But that's the next phase of this evolution, isn't it? Is the squad behind. Because that first team, you mentioned earlier, you can't see us challenging for honours. I wonder if, Ali, that comes down to... because they're not going to play together for 38 games, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be suspensions. If that first team could play together for 38 games, what would your expectation be?
It'd be very, very good, but I think we've also got some really inexperienced players in there. Like Pape Sarr is not going to keep this up.
But he won't be. Bentancur would come in, you'd think.
Yeah. Well, then that's arguably an improvement. But I think even like Kulusevski, we've seen can be patchy. Brennan Johnson, you can't expect him to come in and play and be brilliant. Everywhere across the front line, we've got players that are patchy. Son can be patchy, can't he? He can go in and out.
He's been patchy for nearly 18 months until Saturday.
He's back.
And
hopefully.
it's a good
Be
back in a purple patch. So I think it's an inexperienced team. They haven't played together for very long, and so if we get lucky with injuries and suspensions, then absolutely we can be pushing for top 4. I think 100%. But I think I don't think we can expect them to play. You saw it even with Arsenal last season. Like Bukayo Saka's an incredible player, but he couldn't keep that up for the whole season, and he went off the boil.
And their season fell apart when Saliba got injured, and that was it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, other players couldn't keep up that intensity for a whole season. It's really hard to do, even without Europe.
Yeah. I think the other thing is also you've got to bear in mind that the way that Ange is playing is obviously completely different to the way that we were playing before. So
we've got a graphic on that, and we're going to talk about it later.
No, but in terms of the players, therefore, that it wasn't just he needed to bring players in and out. He's suddenly looking at the way and the setup that he wants, and looking at the players that he's got, and then he's trying to figure that out. So actually, you take into account the fact that there were a lot of players there that perhaps didn't fit into the way he wants to play. He's kind of identified that Maddison obviously is key to the way he wants to play, and we didn't have a player. You put last year's squad with the way he wants to play, you can't do it. So someone like Maddison was super important, and that's perhaps why you weren't going to necessarily get everybody in that we needed.
Just quickly on Maddison, there was a lot of talk that Conte turned him down, and I'm absolutely delighted that he did. He'd have totally ruined James Maddison. Absolutely ruined him. Right, going to come on to Burnley. A couple more things just to close off what's happened at the club this week. Alfie Devine scored a 99th minute penalty, having assisted Port Vale's first in their 2-1 at Oxford. John Wenham, big fan of Alfie Devine, so he'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, he was saying that the reason that we shouldn't get Alex Scott was because he felt that Alfie Devine would go on to be the better player, and he certainly started well at Port Vale.
Yeah, international break coming up. I'm just quickly going to read off the list of players that are going. Vicario with Italy, Davies and Johnson with Wales, Richarlison with Brazil, Romero with Argentina. That can sometimes cause... Please come back. Van der Veen is in the Netherlands squad, yet to make his senior debut. Basuma with Mali, Hojbjerg with Denmark, Perisic with Croatia. He'll be playing for them forever. Solomon for Israel, Son South Korea, and James Maddison is in the England squad. Dogi was in the Italy squad, but has pulled out due to illness. And what? Hang on, I'm not finished.
Go on.
Thanks. And Dane Scarlett, now on loan at Ipswich, is in the England under-21 squad.
I had a question maybe for the two stats men here. I'm going to maybe throw you under a bus a little bit. When was the last time that Spurs did not have a player in the England squad?
Yeah, you've thrown me under a bus.
I'm driving that bus and I've run over Ali. I don't know.
Well, Harry Kane was in every England squad.
No, but I mean, I feel like we've always provided players to that England squad.
Yeah, even in the sort of Defoe genius era, there was a time when we had 3 or 4.
But we do have one, so.
No, that's the point. Thank goodness for James Maddison, because it would be a real shame to have an England squad without a Spurs player in it.
Yeah. Right. Saturday. Smashed Burnley, didn't we? Basically. We talked with Adam Kotcher last week about Burnley and how they were going to be open and expansive, and that would play right into our hands. And Adam Kotcher was right. And it did. But for the first 20 minutes, certainly for the first 4 minutes, we looked a little bit all at sea. And you expect that from away from home. It's a tough place to go, blah, blah, blah. There's no easy games away from home in the Premier League. Porro got done, and Porro defensively is, for me, still an issue, but I thought he had an excellent game. But even after that goal, we were very quiet for 15 minutes. And as I said just before, I thought he maybe could have taken Sarr off. I'm glad he didn't. But wasn't the best start.
It was a tough start. They came out all guns blazing. They got the early goal. It points to... I mean, look, we were saying last week that a team like Burnley and the way that they're going to play against us is a team that we have the better quality player we should be beating if they're going to be trying to play like that. And I said I was more concerned about a team like Sheffield United who aren't going to play like that. And I back us, obviously, to beat Sheffield United at home in a couple of weeks. But that sort of a game presents more concern for me. But, you know, after the first couple of minutes, I was sat in there like a little bit nervous about... But it did just take the team some time to adjust and react. And actually, I hope it's something that they learn from, because they will go away from home to teams like Arsenal coming up in a couple of weeks, and they won't have that opportunity to come back in the way that they did and take control of a game against a team like Arsenal. So it has to be a big learning curve. But the impressive thing was the character they showed. They hung in those first 15 minutes, and then they found their way, and they went on to absolutely smash them. The only other point, a slight point of concern, for me, was Burnley still scored 2, and very easily, but from a world-class save, could have had 3.
But we know this. We've talked all along how it's going to be up and down all season.
We wanted fun football, didn't we? We wanted goals at either end.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm not complaining, but I hope we do tighten up going forwards somehow, because for a team like Burnley to have potentially scored 3 perfectly good goals by cutting us open is a bit concerning.
I actually think in that sense it was perfect, because got the result, scored 5 goals, massive confidence boost and a shake-up. like a bit of a wake up call, that you're like, right, the forwards get Son comes into international break having scored a hat trick. He's absolutely buzzing. Solomon played really well. Maddison is just loving life. There's so much good feeling about the team, but equally there are improvements to be made.
Yeah.
We're not going into the international break thinking we're absolutely perfect.
Well, the last international break came on the back of the 3-3 draw at Southampton, where Conte had an absolute meltdown. So the feeling going into this international break is much, much better. The equaliser was very much out of the old school counter-attacking style that we'd seen in the last few years. And for me, that was really interesting because, look, you're not going to score the same goal every week, but I was in my head, it was like Angeball goals are all going to be with 6 players flooding the box. But we mixed it up, and one of 2 brilliant passes from Porro to Son, and great to see him bag some goals.
I mean, without putting too much of a damp, the defending for that first goal was pretty poor. The pass came across to Solomon, and both the centre backs or the defenders there both went with him. No, and the Son's just there. I mean, it wasn't good. But as far as I like your point, the mentality.
What episode? Episode 19. He's finally agreeing with
the mentality that they held. And we've seen it in actually at least 3 of the opening 4. We went a goal down away at Brentford. United had a couple of good early chances and were really on top, and we bounced back. Bournemouth, we were a bit more in the game, and then obviously, as you said, we went a goal down, and that's just something that it's taken at least 45 minutes, the old joke, to start playing in certainly last season. But we're just bouncing right back under Ange.
And I think this was the interesting thing as well, was we went a goal down, and whereas in the past we would go a goal down and bit nervy, are we actually going to get back into this? The first 15 minutes, we weren't playing well, but I was confident that at some point we would get on top of them, and I was very confident that we would get goal or goals and go on to win.
You said at 3-1, Vicario makes that save, which was a very good save, and 3-2, it's a different game. I actually didn't feel like it even would be. I just felt we'd score again, and that we'd score enough goals to win that game.
Yeah. And I still think we'd have won, don't get me wrong. But 3-2 and Turf Moor's bouncing and it gets them up. It's a much harder game than it.
Not that we're obviously really that bothered, but I do think going forward, I think we might look back on this game and think that was a better win when Burnley maybe put a couple of teams away at home.
I was about to say, I think Burnley will improve as the season goes on. I think Company is going to realise he can't play quite like that against teams as good as Tottenham, and so it was actually a really good time to play Burnley.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get better and make things more difficult for our rivals.
Yeah. Just on the starting lineup, Richarlison started. There was a few whispers on Twitter that he was injured. I don't think you have an injured player on the bench. However, like the knock might be, I don't think that was because Richarlison was injured. I think that was because he's seen enough of Richarlison in the first 4 games. But also tactically, I think it wasn't the game for Richarlison. We saw the counter-attacking goal from Son. Richarlison might come back in against Sheffield United, who will sit in, and it might be a game for Richarlison to pick up pieces in the penalty area. But I actually said before the game on Twitter, I'd have started Richarlison today. So a lot of humble pie from me. But do we think now that maybe that's it, that Richarlison is going to be a substitute and Son's going to be the number 9?
Well, definitely in the next game.
Well, you think, I've just said I don't know if he will.
No, he's got to, after scoring a hat-trick. That's the thing.
It's a different. I think Sheffield United is a different game.
I agree.
Yeah, but
analysis guy agrees.
I'm always wrong, please.
I would be so surprised. I'm not saying that Richarlison's finished. Far from it. And I think, as we've already said, with a 38-game season, this is why you bring in extra reinforcements, your Solomons, your Brennan Johnsons. Or as it will now be, Richarlison on the bench. I can't imagine he's going to change the team at all after scoring 5 and with Son getting a hat-trick. Is he now going to put him back on? You're suggesting that he's now going to put him back onto the wing where he
does nothing.
I don't know whether he will. I'm just saying that I don't know if. I think it's such a different opponent. Sheffield United are going to go into that game and just sit back, aren't they? Yeah. And it's going to be a completely different game, and that doesn't suit Son at all. He would prefer to have a bit of space out wide, cut in, and maybe shoot from the edge of the box.
Yeah,
I remember many a team coming to our place when Potch Hull came to us.
Oh no, Sheffield United was his. I think it was his last game. Certainly, it was the beginning of the end for him. We lost at home to Sheffield United.
The teams that sat in deep.
And they sat in and they counted on us twice. I remember them having a very, very tight VAR decision. They go against them. But they beat us, I think, and they just sat in. And
So teams like that cause problems. That will be Brentford. Maybe a little bit do that.
They do.
I think not quite as much as Sheffield United. Maybe we've got a stat about that later. I'll be interested to see actually that, but not quite as much Sheffield. It will be interesting to see how we pick apart a team like Sheffield United in our next game.
Well,
but on the go on.
No, go on.
I was just going to say on the Richarlison thing.
After
I do absolutely agree that Richarlison should start against Sheffield United, but against Arsenal, I'd like to see Son up front and Johnson right wing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I like it. Sorry,
No.
I was just gonna say I think this is all positive that there are options there. There's quite a few. We've all got good arguments for a few different options in these next games, and I don't think anyone should see it as particularly negative to if Son doesn't start up front. But I think there's every reason that he could or should. But I think there's
Should we discuss our options in defence? Oh no, we can't because there are.
We've already done
One thing we can do in this wonderful studio of ours is I can press a button and that can come up. So what we've got for people who are only listening to the pod, if you're listening on Spotify, you can actually press play, open the app and press play, and you can actually see us, and you can see this graphic. So what we've got on screen here, and we will put all these on our social media channels at EOGTHFC. I think. We've got a comparison here between Conte ball and Ange ball, as we'll call them. Everything is up, and the positives under Ange. Possession is up. Pressures in the final third is very up. 69 per game compared to 33.7 per game. Touches in the opposition box is up. Shots are up. Goals are up. Expected goals are up. And field tilt is up. Ali, you're going to explain that. Actually, do that now. What is field tilt?
I'll go straight in on field tilt then. Okay, so the definition of field tilt is a measure of territorial dominance between teams. It looks at the share of possession each team has in their attacking third compared to their opponent. So what that does is takes each team's passes in the attacking third and compares it to the total between the two teams. Right. So you get, if you think of passes in the attacking third as tilting the pitch, so if you have more passes in the attacking third to your opponent, the pitch will be tilted towards the opposition.
So the opposition are rolling towards us under Conte.
Exactly. Yeah.
Basically.
And I think it's just that isn't particularly surprising. I don't think, to be honest, anything on that screen is surprising. Anyone who watched Tottenham last season and this season wouldn't be surprised to see that numbers have gone up in these kinds of numbers have gone up.
I'll do the numbers. I will do the numbers because I think it's quite important. Because as you say, no one's surprised, but the numbers are stark. Certainly, touches in the opposition box have gone up from 23.6 per game to 43.5 per game.
Just on that, the highest Tottenham have ever had on record for touches in the opposition box, I think was about 27 over the course of a season. Obviously, this is only 4 games for Ange, but that is just that is the most stark I was going to talk about. That is an absolutely massive number. And it's also, what's interesting is all of these numbers from this season are skewed a little bit by the domination Tottenham had over Burnley, particularly goals, for example. And top touches in the opposition box are a little bit, but even against United, we had 40 in the opposition box.
Yeah, but you say that, and right to say it, but we went to Burnley and lost 1-0 there last year. So I know they were different then.
Not last year, they were.
2 years ago.
Sorry, 2 years ago. All right, so that can't come up on here. But we went to these teams last year and didn't play like that. So whilst I agree Burnley gave us the ball and allowed us into their box so often, we have played against teams like that last year and did nothing.
You might say that these numbers will start to sort of, I don't want to say even out, but plateau or whatever over the course of the season. But
which they will.
They will. But it's certainly a hell of a good indicator as to the direction.
Exactly, and that's the main thing, is just how stark the difference is. I think generally, I think we spoke last time I was on the pod about Postecoglou tends to have slow starts, and that's because his way of playing is so particular and players often take a bit of time to get used to them. So Celtic lost 3 of their first 7 league games under him, which is crazy to think because Celtic win every single game. But the fact that Tottenham's players squad have taken to his ideas so quickly and these numbers are so stark is a really, really, really big positive. I think these numbers will plateau a little bit. Maybe possession won't quite so much. Expected goals numbers are really good, but that's not crazy. That could keep up. Shots is these numbers could stay sort of near that number. I think just the point that this graphic is trying to make is just how extreme the difference has been from this season to last already.
I said after the first game, I wouldn't be surprised if we score. I'd bank us now to score 2 goals a game, just looking at the way we played. But going back to what you're saying about Postecoglou making a slow start, it goes back to a couple of things that I've been saying. That firstly, some of the players that we have there weren't quite as bad as people were trying to make out based
Under
on
Conte.
Under Conte.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
it's
It was the way he told them to play.
Absolutely, and it also the other thing that a lot of the detractors said when we announced that Ange was going to be the manager, oh yeah, but he's done it only in Celtic and in Japan. But the fact of the matter is, when you put him with better players, maybe he can get results quicker, and that's basically what you're
said
saying.
about Celtic. I looked at his start at Marinos in Japan. Wasn't a great start there either. So it takes time, and I know we haven't got this graphic, but actually there is an OPTA graphic doing the rounds that we've had the second easiest start.
Yeah, which I
disagree with.
I was going to come on to. I mean, this is you can't take this as complete gospel, but it's what we did before the start of the season was compared each team's first 5 games using something called our power rankings, which is a very technical thing which I won't try and explain, but it basically tries to rank every team. There's 13,000 teams compared and gives every team a rating between 0 and 100, 0 being the worst team in the world, 100 being the best team in the world. Manchester City, 0 was a
Tottenham
team
under Conte.
that I can't remember the name of now, but a team that you wouldn't have heard of.
Does it take into account home or away?
This didn't. This didn't.
So yeah, all right, okay.
There are flaws,
Yeah.
but like with anything like this, there are flaws, and you also are comparing, say, I don't know, Sheffield United last season to Sheffield United this season, Brentford last season to Brentford this season. We don't know what they are.
Yeah.
What they are
It's
going to
literally
be.
just on paper, the power rankings without any other consideration or any other factor.
We want Ali to come back.
I
I wouldn't say that this is officially saying Tottenham had the second easiest start. I'm saying that generally speaking, they had an easier start than lots of other teams.
I think that's
and
fair.
that is.
I think that's
and
fair.
I think we can agree that on paper we would have said we'd like to go to Brentford and get a point.
We should be beating
United
Burnley
at
and Bournemouth.
home, you'd hope to win, and Burnley and Bournemouth.
Had never beaten them at the Tottenham new stadium until then,
Yep.
so not necessarily.
No. I think before the season we said, "Oh, I don't fancy Brentford away in the first day," and then we've
But
got United coming to us on the
and
second
Burnley
day.
away might have
Yeah.
looked like a tricky fixture before the season, but then they've come out and clearly it's not the case. But anyway, I think it's just an indication that there are lots of hard games to come, and if you actually look over the first 10 games, Tottenham's run goes from the second easiest to the easiest, and even though they've got Arsenal and Liverpool to come, it's just a fact of playing all 3 of the promoted teams in that time, not playing City, not playing Chelsea, not playing Newcastle.
You'll have played Arsenal, Liverpool and United.
Yeah, but other teams will have played more than those teams.
Yeah.
It's not completely scientific. It's just that there are a lot of.
I think
who cares if you get momentum out of having easier games?
And-
Then that's
And
also-
how did
also
Arsenal
if you
start
win-
last season? They had an unbelievably easy run at the beginning of last season,
Yeah,
which built
yeah,
the
yeah.
momentum. Palace away first game was tough, but once they got through that, their run was a joke.
But I think
last
it's really
season.
interesting because we said it. We're not going to get carried away. We have got 2 graveyards for points for us coming up, which is Arsenal away and Liverpool anywhere happens to be at home. They are now the only team we've not beaten in the league at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I know we've got Sheffield United coming up. Should be a gimme, but we don't know.
It's probably
There's no easy games in this league.
it's probably a good thing to have the new style of football against an easier, I'm doing inverted commas with my hands to anyone listening, start, and then that horrible run near the end of the season where we know a bit, the players know each other a bit more.
Agreed.
hopefully.
Agreed.
Yeah.
One thing I want to compare the current team to, and Gary, we talked about this this week off air, is Tottenham under Ange to the last time we were really good. Not just 3 months under Conte at the end of that season. It is under Potch in 2016-17 when we finished runners up. Again, this is a visual for those watching us. If you're not, we'll put it on our social media. Again, if you're watching on Spotify, make your screen bigger and press play. Things are up. Possession is down. Regains in the final third are pretty much doubled under Ange. Touches in the opposition box are higher. Shots are higher. Goals per game are higher. Expected goals is slightly up, and field tilt is actually lower. Again, it's a small sample size, but this is what we wanted. We all talk about getting our Tottenham back. I think in the short term, getting our Tottenham back is getting back to the sort of the way we played under Pochettino. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, like you say, this is a small sample size. Keeping up something like 2.26 goals per game over an entire season is really, really, really crazy numbers. Yeah. So I think things like that will level out. And there are just so many positives from this that we are even comparing the two, I guess, because that was Tottenham the best, certainly in my lifetime, that I've ever seen them. I think, again, like we said, a small sample size. It does kind of slightly highlight some differences. So Regains in the final third, everyone thinks of peak Potch as like crazy pressing. That wasn't that 3.8 is still quite is still a decent number for that. I had to change this from pressures because we didn't have pressures. We had pressures on the previous graphic, but we didn't have pressures numbers going
I quite like Regains because that actually tells you more, I think, than pressures. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of, I suppose, pressures shows intent and Regains shows effectiveness.
Yes.
In the final third. It's just a kind of indication that we are touches in the opposition box being so much higher shows, I think, when Tottenham under Potch when we got near a goal, there was more intent and on scoring, and under Ange maybe there is more patience.
Is this a Harry Kane hole here? Do you think there's something in that more touches now, and it probably will come down, but how drastically we don't know, is that other players now are getting into the box where is there any reliance on Kane in these numbers?
I suppose so, but there have been a couple of times when I've been watching Spurs and I've been screaming at James Maddison to shoot when he's got the ball just inside the box. And we maybe, arguably, someone might say we've overplayed a little bit that close to goal. But I suppose that's just a stylistic sort of indicator, isn't it? But I don't know. Yeah, maybe previously, if we were playing this way with Harry Kane, those touches in the opposition box, didn't realise how hard that is to say. Might be a bit lower. With more shots going.
You've also got Ange likes his fullbacks to get in the box as well, which we've never really seen under Potch or.
Well, Walker and Rose were flying wingers when they were wide.
Yeah. I mean, now, Ben Davies popping up, scoring goals, that kind of thing.
I think it's a very small sample size. We can't stress that enough. And, OPTA tells us it's the second easiest start of the season. So perhaps
stop criticising.
I'm not criticising it, but so let's just emphasise it has been a favourable start. But these stats sort of show me that perhaps we are more efficient with our possession and what we're doing under Ange than we were under Potch, because our expected goals is higher. Our possession is slightly lower, but we're doing a lot more with the possession that we've got. So it shows me that we are being a little bit more efficient. And something that we touched on as well earlier is that I don't think we had as much under Potch was that sort of more direct breakaway goal, which we saw for the equaliser against Burnley with the ball over the top from Porro. And we've done that a few times. With Potch, especially sort of at times, it did feel as though we'd pass aimlessly along the back and we'd have a lot of possession, but we weren't, sometimes without Eriksen picking out that final ball, it felt like we were unsure. And I mentioned Hull earlier. I remember Hull coming and parking the bus and they beat us 1-0, I think it was. And, there are a number of games under Potch that went along that sort of route. And Sheffield United may prove me wrong, but I'm confident now that actually we break down even deep block teams better than perhaps we even did under Potch. And these numbers would seem to start to point towards that.
And I think from just watching the first 4 games, the main difference in the way that we build up the play is that intricacy that we have in midfield with Maddison and with Bissouma. Obviously, we had the likes of Ali and Eriksen, but Eriksen would often find himself much higher up. And the way we're playing through the middle, I think, is what helps you to break those teams down, because then you've got the guys out wide who can find the space, and then you've also got the fullbacks who are there as well. It's just overloading the midfield in a way that very few teams are doing this. I mean, Man City are doing it, Arsenal slightly. But
I'm going to name drop here and pick it up off the floor. I was with Owen Hargreaves yesterday, and he actually said, I think you've possibly got the best midfield in the Premier League.
And I think that's what we're seeing. I think that to me, in terms of, these looking at the numbers is great, and obviously the way we played under Potch. I mean, at times, let's not forget, we struggled on occasion to break teams down, and I think the way that we are playing now will hopefully kind of put that almost to one side. And you may concede, but you shouldn't struggle to break teams down.
I think Tottenham should be in a much better position to break teams down. But I mean, even City struggle at times. To teams. Some teams are just really, really, really good at defending, and it won't be a problem if there will be games that Tottenham aren't able to break teams down. I do think another thing to mention is I think part of the reason that Spurs signed Maddison to play this way, but a little added bonus with Maddison is I think over his entire Premier League career he's the top scorer from outside the box. And when you come up against those teams that are really, really deep, if you can get players like Maddison, Son, even Kulusevski into those positions, Spurs now have 3 players who can score from distance. And back when in the Gareth Bale season, that was the way we played, was just to get the ball to him and score from outside the box. And that is another way to beat a low block.
And Solomon as well.
Yeah, he can hit. He does hit a good shot.
Do you mind, just one quick question, if you have it available, is we haven't looked at XG. It might be, if you haven't got it available, but the XG against under Potch versus the first 4 games, have you got it?
No.
I could get it if you were to talk amongst yourselves. I could get it.
Oh, let's talk amongst ourselves.
Have a quick look, because that'd be interesting.
I want 2 things. I don't want us to ever lose a game, right? I don't. But it'd be really interesting to see how we lose our first game. Because if it is at Arsenal, we know how we lose at Arsenal. We just let in lots of goals.
The ref gives them something?
The ref gives them something. No. The ref doesn't give them something. The ref is fair.
And Royal makes a silly challenge and deservedly gets sent off for something that nobody else gets sent off for. Fine, yeah, got it. Cool, carry on.
But you know how we play at Arsenal. I mean, very interested to see how we go at Arsenal. I'm interested to see how we...
I think if we lose, though, there'll be goals in it.
Fine, but I mean, we're going to lose at some point.
5-2, isn't it?
I mean...
It was 2 in a row, wasn't it? Once. Look, that... I'm interested to see how we react and how we lose a game, because if we do lose to Arsenal, we've got to react against Liverpool. It's going to happen. Interested to see what happens when it does. Second of all, Ali mentioned this James Maddison. We all sit here and go, oh, wouldn't it be great if Maddison was pinging crosses in to Harry Kane? Do we possibly think that Kane and Maddison may not have actually have worked in this system because Kane would have just swallowed up Maddison's space?
I think Kane would have had to be much more disciplined on being an out-and-out 9 and not dropping deep and trusting. I think a lot of the reason Kane dropped deep was because he kind of had to do everything at that time for us, right?
The Harry Kane team.
Yeah. Particularly last season. But I think if he had played in this team, and we kind of saw it in the friendly against, was it Shakhtar when he scored 4? Yeah. When he wasn't dropping and he stayed up front and he knocked in 4 pretty easy goals for him.
It's the irony that actually when Pep called us the Harry Kane team, we weren't actually the Harry Kane team, and we probably became it in the last 12 months.
I also think that the system last season didn't really have an 8 or a 10, whatever you want to call that position. And Kane clearly rated Maddison. He wasn't going to. I don't think Kane would have been dropping into the spaces that he knew. He would have trusted Maddison.
Yeah.
Well, there were rumours doing the rounds, weren't there, that he went to Tottenham and said, Kane went to them and said, "You've got to try and sign Maddison."
I think Harry Kane is so good that he would have been able to fit into
probably
any system, and he would have just done. He would have had to stay higher up the pitch, and he would have been doing a way better job than Richarlison.
But we had to talk about that because you were looking something up.
Yes. So I have the numbers. So 2016-17 under Potch was 0.89 expected goals against per game, so less than a goal a game, and it's almost double this season.
That's a problem.
That's the risk that you run. As I said, I think we will struggle. We will concede more than we did under Potch, but we may well score more. So that's, we may struggle less to break teams down.
Yeah, and again, it's a small sample size, and the team is evolving and growing, and our XG may well go down, but it was something that I thought of, because as much as we're more efficient with the ball now, it looks under Potch perhaps we were a bit more controlled all round.
Just one more graphic that we've got. This is a real visual. So again, we'll put it on our social media. and if you're not, click on our YouTube and you can watch us talking about it. I really want to get Ali to explain this.
So basically, this compares the styles of the Premier League teams' style of play. So up the y-axis, up the side, you have direct speed upfield, which is the speed at which each team carries the ball up the pitch when they are in possession. And along the bottom, you have passes per sequence, which is each time a team has possession, it's how many passes they put together. So in the bottom right, unsurprisingly, way out, nowhere near anyone else, is Manchester City, showing that they play slow and intricately. And in the top left, you have Forest and West Ham, who, when they get the ball, they get it up the pitch as quickly as possible with as few passes as possible. Again, small sample size, yada, yada, yada. But I suppose the interesting thing is that we've got Spurs in the more in the slow and intricate part section of it, which is kind of unsurprising. But given how much of the ball they've had, I suppose what I find interesting is that they're not quite out sort of in front of Newcastle, say. In front of isn't really the right way to put it, but you know what I mean, more extreme than Newcastle, who have played against really sort of top of the table teams. And I personally take from that Spurs are mixing it up well, and what Postecoglou has done really well, and what we saw with that a couple of those goals against Burnley, is that when you come into a team like Tottenham, who were obviously played way below their capabilities last season, you don't throw everything out. If you've got players like Son and Kulusevski who can clearly play Angeball well, but are also very, very good transitional players, you still use that. And so Postecoglou is using Porro kind of in that Kieran Trippier way. That Kieran Trippier would play long balls, and Trent Alexander-Arnold does for Liverpool when there's that opportunity to. And Spurs are mixing it up well. So the kind of slow possession is counterbalanced by a bit of that fast attacking play.
It's shown in the game against Burnley. We scored, I think, one of the Son goals was 16 passes, which was only one goal last season. Did we have more? Which was one of the Kane goals at Leeds, 22 passes. But we also saw the quick pass, Porro, Solomon, and then Son for the equaliser. So, like I said at the start, I think we all thought we were going to get this Angeball, which would just be everybody standing up front. But he's clearly such a good manager. He knows when to mix it up. And I think starting Son against Burnley was because he realised we're going to have gaps, and Son's better at exploiting that than Richarlison. Yeah,
absolutely. So another big tick for Postecoglou, really.
What are we thinking?
Well, I'm thinking, is there anything we're not good at?
Well, I think we'll soon find out.
Or what about all the fans that thought we'd get relegated when we sold Kane? There were some of those doing the rounds on social media as well. Back in their box.
I think basically we're loving Angeball. And it's been great. It's been great to have Ali on to explain what we thought we knew, but now we know.
I'm loving Angeball instead.
Yeah. We'll send this to Robbie Williams. Yep. Gentlemen, I think it's a good place to wrap up. I think we've dissected everything. Jake, thanks for coming back.
Thanks. See you next week.
Yeah, if selected.
Oh, okay. You've done. I'm like, how do you think he's got on in the right of the back four? I think he's better in the back three, isn't he? Only really playing a back three.
I've had the protection of Ali here.
Right.
It's been
a bit more solid.
Gary, thanks for coming on. Ali, obviously, second time on, first time in the studio. Really great to have you on, and we'll see you again soon.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
So as Jake says, we will be back next week, and up the Spurs.